Come here, you're one of the lads Kylie's talking about, by the way. I saw you in the Sunday Independent yesterday saying nice things about Limerick, and he's had enough of this crap, okay? Have a listen. Here's John Kiely talking after their win yesterday.
Listen, let's be honest about it. There was some amount of bullshit spoke about our team and the season ahead this week and the week before. You know, you've just got to acknowledge the fact that this is nonsense. This is not true. This is lies. You know, this is a softening up exercise, and you can accept that and allow it to interfere with how you prepare and how you play, or you can, you know, get on with your job and accept that every single time you're on the ball you're going to get hit like a train, and you know, be ready for that.
Do you think it did interfere, John?
I don't think it interfered at all, to be quite honest, because we dealt with it. You know, I knew this was going to be a really tight game. Am I the only one that's surprised about the result here today? What's the problem? Like, you know, Waterford are a fantastic side. You know, they've been in a couple of All-Ireland finals in the last number of years. They've been in Munster finals. You know, they're a serious team. And, you know, they brought out an absolutely massive challenge to us today, and we're just relieved to come out the right side of it. And, you know, we have huge respect for the opposition. I think people need to have more respect for the other teams that are out there and what they can bring and what, you know, what's at stake. Every day you go out, there's a game at stake, and you've got to lay it on out there. And if you can do enough, you might get out the right side of it. And if you don't, you won't. It doesn't matter who you are.
So what's your game, O'Connor? You are indulging in a softening up exercise mentally, and frankly it's a disgrace, and I'm calling you out on it now.
No, Joe, not me. I'm definitely not one of the guys that John is referring to. Yeah, listen, I did a piece in the Sunday Independent, and I said if they look, they're expected to wipe the floor with everybody. If they play to the levels they're capable of, then yeah, they're going to come out of Munster. They're going to be Munster and All-Ireland champions.
How dare you say that about this great team?
Absolutely, how dare I? But I did add the caveat that I don't think. I mean, Brian Lohan, Davy Fitz, Liam Cahill, Pat Ryan, those guys were forged in the Munster Championship back in the 1990s, Joe, and I don't think it's any of those guys' nature to back down. And you know, everyone was writing Waterford off yesterday. I made the point that I looked down through their panel and I saw Stephen Bennett, Austin Gleeson, Tyg de Bourke, Conor Gleeson, Caleb Lyons, you know, top tier players who have, you know, played in Munster finals, All-Ireland finals, league finals, and you know, I didn't think there was any way that Waterford, especially given the pain that Limerick have inflicted on them in recent years, were going to just rock up yesterday and go through the motions. No, I thought that Davy would be practical about it, because there's a massive game with Cork next weekend, and if it was getting away from them, or if, you know, Limerick had opened up a big deficit, well then maybe, you know, you start looking ahead to next Sunday. Yeah. But I was not surprised by what Waterford brought. Limerick maybe not been at the levels that maybe we expected. Maybe, you know, I think maybe there was an element of surprise about that. But this is the Munster Championship, Joe, and we got two crackers yesterday.
Yes, we did. I'm obviously talking in jest here, because it's usually we were written off, so it's quite funny to hear somebody go the opposite route. But on a serious note, what do you read into Kylie's frustration with the way his team is being talked about? Does that speak as somebody who is trying to manufacture almost a siege mentality of sorts, and to keep his team very motivated, and that's what he's doing here? Or do you think he's genuinely, you know, a touch frustrated at the characterisation that Limerick are so far ahead of the rest? Because you listen to him, he sounded very sincere when you hear the clips. It does sound as if he thinks you genuinely have all gone way too far when you're talking about the gap between us and the rest. I can't work out, is he trying to create that siege mentality, or if he's been very, very sincere?
No, it's a bit of both, Joe, because I think really what he's referencing is there was some talk about this team doing never mind a 4 in a row. This is a 6 in a row job, and I think, you know, listen, he's no different to Brian Cody, you know, or any of the great managers, Joe, Gerald Lognan. They will find whatever edge they can, and you know, you sense with Cody that you know, the biggest fear that he had in that Kilkenny dressing room was complacency, you know, and I mean that was, you know, his genius, in the sense that it didn't matter how many All-Ireland medals you had, you know, whether you were Jackie Tyrrell, JJ Delaney, you know, you felt or were convinced that if you weren't performing in Nolan Park on a Tuesday and Thursday night, you didn't play on Sunday. And, you know, I think John is just, again, complacency is the big fear, and arguably the biggest threat to this Limerick team and where they want to go and what they want to achieve. And therefore, you know, he's absolutely determined, you know, to seize on anything he can to prevent that rot potentially setting in the Limerick dressing room. And you know, he knows himself that, I mean, Clare Clare now in trouble, backs to the wall, are coming to the Gaelic grounds on Saturday night, and he's got his players ready. And again, maybe yesterday was a bit of a wake up call that, Cahill, Cork, and Tip down the line. No one's going to back down, and Limerick are going to have to be at it every day they play. Certainly until they have the 4, 5, 6 points that gets them to the Munster final and gets them out secure. So in the meantime, I just think he's going to take and use Joe whatever he can, to guard against, as I said, any levels of complacency, and that's what a good manager does.
So they were 4 points to the good at half time. It felt like they were further ahead on the balance of play, but just 4 points ahead at half time. Then kind of crucial period where Waterford, there was a mishit free, dropped short and made a few silly mistakes, and Limerick went out to 6 points on the hour mark, even with 14 men, and you thought, well, okay, that's game done and dusted. And Waterford came back again. In fairness, they were fit and they got to within 2 and had their moments where they might have got closer again. Some very bad wides. Their wide count was high, Waterford. So what would you say of both sides? It doesn't sound like you feel Limerick were at the pitch, and yet at the same time, down to 14 men for over 25 minutes, they still managed to come through. What would you say of Waterford as well?
Well, I think from a Limerick perspective, Joe, I mean, they were 1-8 to 3 ahead, and I thought in my own mind that that's it, game over.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just going to be a matter of what the margin is going to be. But I suppose look at a combination of maybe Limerick not being as sharp as maybe, but like you got to give a lot of credit to Waterford for the way they made it a contest. And 1-8 to 3 after the goal went in, they lost Tadhg de Burka, and you feel for him, Achilles injury, seasoning ending, given the way he's come back from those cruciates in the past, and it's, and that was to most teams, Joe, that would have been a mortal blow. But they roll up their sleeves, and look at they just ground it out and found a way to stay in the match, and that's the beauty of hurling. That once you're kind of 5-6 points. And the gap isn't any wider than that. It can change so quickly. You get a goal and suddenly all bets are off. And they just managed to I suppose, look at through dint of hard work and honesty and just working very, very hard for each other all over the field. They just got themselves back into it. And I think from my perspective, after the sending off, you're wondering now, are Limerick in trouble here? But they really steadied the ship. And got it back out to kind of 4 again, Joe. I think at that stage, got a couple of points. And it looked as if they'd weathered the storm. But then Watford came again. And, I mean, the bottom line, Joe, and I've got the stats here in front of me. I think, Watford had 13 wides, Limerick had 7.
And they were bad wides as well, James. Like, there was one from Desi Hutchinson, which was very scoreable, maybe 30, 35 metres out, not much of an angle at a crucial point. And it almost sucked the energy out of the situation. They left it behind them a touch.
Yeah, and Joe, and I was, I watched it up until it was 50-55 minutes, and then departed for my seat in Cusack Park in Ennis. But I was listening to it on the way in the car, and even at the end, the one that Gleeson kind of went through the middle with, and Kyle Hayes just ate up the ground. When maybe a lesser player or someone not as athletic or quick as Hayes was, maybe Gleeson would have got a shot off. But Sean Finn was waiting to go. And, he went at the right time and the cover was probably back. But Patrick Fitzgerald just probably needed to get that ball into his hand. He kind of doubled on it. And maybe if they could have, recycled that, at least get something out of it. They're still right in it. And you felt that probably their chance slipped away when that went wide. But they'll take a lot of positives out of it, Joe. And, this Munster Championship, I mean, it's still very, very much wide open, and Waterford are going to have a say in it yet. And it just becomes such a big game now on Sunday for them, Joe.
Yeah, history suggests they're up against it in their end robin. Lost their first game, Porky Queeve on Sunday.
Well, Joe, just a stat there, talking to Christy, their brother, during the day, and I think he said 50% of the teams that have lost their first game have come out of Munster.
Okay.
Since
that's not the perception, actually.
Yeah, and I mean, even there is this myth that you lose your first game and you're especially at home, you're toast, as in Clare's case. But I mean, Cork lost 2 last year, lost the first 2, and didn't lose them. Well beaten by Limerick. Should have been beaten more comprehensively than the final scoreboard told against Clare, and yet went to Walsh Park, got the win down there and turned it around. So, all is not lost for anybody, even with 2 defeats. But I suppose the caveat there is, your fate may be out of your own hands, and it could come down to scoring difference at that point. So look, Joe, it's still all to play for.
Okay, I will bow to your brother. He has a stat or two up his sleeve on occasion. One last quick one on Waterford. It's interesting. We had Tommy Welch on updates for us yesterday on the show. He felt Waterford were not half as defensive as he thought they would be. And then, by contrast, James Skehill on the Hurling Pod felt Waterford were uber defensive. So where lies the truth?
Yeah, again, I didn't see the last, the last 20 minutes. I mean, I don't know who I was listening to that felt that, when Austin came on and they were 14-14, that they went long. And maybe it was Shane Dowling on the Sunday game last night when, that was the time maybe, and the Limerick full back line, generally, devour that kind of stuff. They manage it very, very well. They're good in the air. They're strong. Invariably you're going to struggle to come down with it. And, Sean Finn, Barry Nash, in my case, he was back in there, are as good a full back line as what's in the game. And maybe that was the time they needed to just keep trying to find those pockets of space and get those scores from distance. So they probably wasted, ball at a crucial stage in the second half when, that's the time you have to be efficient. You've got to take those chances. And Joe, listen, like I'm saying this for 10 years, as long as I've been, trying to analyse things. Once the wide count gets into double digits, you're in trouble. Yeah. And the best teams, even Tip and Ennis again, what was it? It was 10 wides. Clare had 15, and the margins are so small. There's the difference between Clare and Tip, and Waterford will rue, as I said, 13 wides. It's 6 or 7 too many, and as I said, Limerick's again in single figures. They're just more efficient. They make better decisions, take better options, and in the tight games, that often makes a difference.
It's true. Those wides suck the air out of Waterford, you felt at times. You mentioned you were in Ennis, so Clare 323, Tipperary 522. That is Tipperary's first championship win since July of 2021, which is an extraordinary stat for you. As you mentioned, Clare hit 15 wides. They coughed up some avoidable goals. Goalkeeper didn't have a great day, which can happen as well on his first start. Eamon Fowdy in the Clare goal. It's interesting, in advance of this game, it was billed as, with regard to how they had treated the league, Clare had very much focused on championship and not put all that much into the league, whereas Cahill was almost trying to re-energise Limerick and use the league to put a bit of life back into them. And suddenly that league form feels a touch more concrete on the back of yesterday. What was your sense of the Clare performance in particular here?
Well, first of all, Joe, it was the first half was absolutely cracking stuff. 18,000. I think the capacity is 18,000. You'd squeeze in probably another 2-3 minimum, but the capacity is 18,000, and they read out the official attendance 17,900, I think it was, or something along those lines. And the stadium felt full, brilliant atmosphere, great first half. Really entertaining first half. 5 goals, 4 in at half time. Listen, Clare just got off to a dreadful start. 1-3. To no score down, and the last thing you needed to give that Tipperary team, I suppose, was oxygen and confidence. Early on, and the first goal came from the sideline, and I suppose Eamon making his debut goal just maybe saw it late, maybe didn't anticipate it. But Clare got back level, and then the second goal again was just a killer score mistake. And the third goal again, just self-inflicted wounds, Joe, and it kept putting Clare into a hole. And that said, Mark Rogers got 2 goals, late on the first half. First goal was brilliant finish. Caught a high ball, 3 Tip defenders just turned and swiveled and buried it.
Are they back in a big way, Tip? Are they back in a big way?
They are, Joe. Again, look, we all know the quality that they have. In terms of stick men and skill level, Noel McGrath got 4 from play. Jason Ford, excellent in over dead balls. I think he might have missed 1 long distance range free. He nailed everything else. John McGrath worked hard, but I still think there's a lack of pace outside of Jake Morris, who was brilliant yesterday. 2-4 on the board early on. He was magic and a threat all day. Pulled down for the penalty as well. Clare looked, Joe, like they could really get at them when they ran at them in the first half. And cause them a lot of problems. And once guys like Ryan Taylor were able to break through that first line, they looked like they were going away from the Tip halfbacks. And Brian O'Mara was playing virtually as a sweeper. So Cork, I think, Waterford, Limerick will be looking at this, thinking that maybe we can get at Tip and maybe exploit that. But Tip were well organised, well set up. And Joe, look at they have quality players, and I suppose look at one final thing on Tip. You know, the mindset. Clare got 2 goals, but there were at least 2 other opportunities out in the first half when it was on. And Clare's instinct was to put the ball over the bar. A Tipperary player in similar circumstances is thinking goal.
Yeah.
And that, again, at this level, especially if you're looking at how we're going to take Limerick down, obviously at the weekend from Clare's perspective, everyone knows or feels that, look, you've got to get goals and you've got to take whatever goal chances present themselves. And Clare, just at times, are content to take the point when maybe there's more on, and to win the big matches again, you've got to have that mindset, and
Yes.
Tip have it.
Yes.
And they were pretty efficient when it came down to converting those chances.
Well, it's a beautiful situation now for Tipperary. They put the feet up, they bask in the loveliness of a winning start. They get a good look at Cork, who play Waterford next weekend, and then they take on Cork. Clare will go to the Gaelic grounds against Limerick, which is going to be a hell of a way to try and bounce back. Something on Clare. Tony Kiely, the genius that he is, his lot in life is that he's generally facing a man marker. Last year against Kilkenny in the All-Ireland semi-final, he had Mikey Butler for company. At the weekend, it was Carl Barrett. Clare need to, and I suspect they're talking about it themselves, they need to find a way to get him into a game when he's not in a game.
Yeah, listen, again, like Carl Barrett has man-marked him before, and even you go to the corresponding fixture last year, Barrett man-marked Tony, and Tony didn't have a huge influence on the game, but Clare, were hurling so well elsewhere. It didn't matter. Barrett was attached to him like a limpet, and they were rolling around on the ground at one stage. 2 yellow cards flashed. I'd say midway through the first half. But Joe, Clare still hit 323.
Okay.
Tony didn't maybe wasn't on the ball maybe in the first 15-20 minutes. Struggled maybe to make the impact that we've come to maybe expect. And is it realistic to consider that the guy made his debut like 2012, 2013. It's 2023 now. Can he continue to perform at the levels and the standards that he's set for himself? I mean, is that reasonable? Is that we probably can't maybe expect the same heroics that he's delivered, particularly over the last 2, 3, 4 years. But it wasn't the fact that I think that Tony Kiely wasn't.
It's the other end. Yeah. So if we're finding a way to hit 323, the issue's not with Tony Kiely.
I don't think so, Joe. 15 wides is too many. Free taking again is a bit of an issue. I think our use of the ball decision making out the field is an issue. We're shooting from long range, speculative efforts when Mark Rodgers was sharp, got the 2 goals, and I don't recall Mark Rodgers getting a whole lot of quality ball that he could do something with compared to, say, for example, what was put in front of Jake Morris at the other end, where he was able to, run onto ball that was perfectly placed, look to do something with it, and that to me is a bigger issue. But Joe, 15 wides and you concede 5 goals, you ain't going to win the championship matches, and it doesn't matter what province you're playing in.
Yeah. Leinster, I suppose, takes more of a centre stage next weekend in that we'll see Kilkenny Galway at Nolan Park, 2:00 on Sunday. So what are we looking out for in that one, aside from the obvious?
Yeah, I mean, again, there's probably pressure on Henry and Galway in terms of silverware, and I suppose obviously the no show in last year's Leinster final, where they were so disappointing. I think Galway probably need to win silverware this year, and look at it. Obviously, it's Leinster looks to be clearly between the two of them. They look to be well ahead of the other teams. Wexford obviously went to Nolan Park last year and beat Kilkenny. It's impossible given the form Wexford showed in the league that again Dara doesn't look to have found, for example, a whole lot of new talent, and clearly it was evident during the league that he doesn't have the depth that the other counties have. That once he loses Rory O'Connor or Lee Chin or Liam Ryan or some of these frontline players, he simply doesn't have the same depth that obviously Kiely or some of the other managers have. So that's an issue. So from a Galway perspective, I mean, again, Kevin Cooney to me looks like a player. I think it's a big positive that Nyland played so well. Really well,
yeah. Was it 7 points from play, 13 all told? Yeah.
He was excellent. And I suppose look at from Henry's perspective, it's again maybe getting a chance to look at some maybe the fringe players, Kevin Cooney, some of these other guys maybe in a really big match against Kilkenny. I suppose from Derek's perspective, it's I suppose look, the best way to get back on the horse is play games, and the league final, I'd imagine there was a lot of soul searching done, a lot of analysis in terms of where it's going wrong, what they need to do to correct it, and again look, they were pretty ruthless at the weekend, but this will be a better examination and a better test where they're at. Obviously, it's another game for TJ. He probably needs the games to get back up to his level. Adrian Mullen again needs the games. But you just get the sense, Joe, that it's not, the stakes still aren't as high as they are in Munster.
Yeah.
Again, like for Clare at the weekend, for Waterford the weekend,
do or die.
It's do or die stuff, whereas, you still feel that irrespective of who wins at the weekend, the loser is still going to be in the Leinster final.
Yeah.
Barring some kind of a collapse, and that I can't see that, and I don't think anybody sees that happening.
Okay, very good.